Hello everyone! Today I'm showing you my 4-in-1 endgame base in Palworld's recent Feybreak update. I've got 4 bases running on normal settings with 15 pals each, all set up to focus on breeding, ammo production, and expeditions. I'll walk you through the basic layout and the architecture of each building, share which pals are best to use, and at the end, I'll show you a sample run, along with some optional improvements to make your setup even better. So, let's get right into it. Alright, let's take a quick look at the base layout so you can get a clearer picture of how everything's set up. We've got 4 sub-bases, each with a specific role. On the left, we have Base 1, my main base. This one's the most balanced, handling a little bit of everything. To the right is Base 2, which is dedicated to skill fruits and food supply. Bases 3 and 4 in the back are both mining bases, focused on keeping gold production flowing. Because, trust me, gold is one of the most valuable resources in the endgame. Each base is divided into 5 floors, each serving a unique purpose. On the first floor, we have the spa room. This is where your pals can relax and recharge. The second floor is the pal work area. Pals are working on production, whether it's mining or gathering resources. The third floor is the breeding area. Here, you'll be pairing up pals, condensing and enhancing. The fourth floor is your main interaction room. This is where you'll craft needed items, store and manage everything. Finally, the 5th floor is the expedition floor. This is where your expeditions take place. Now I will go in depth into every single base, starting with the main one. Floor 1 shares the same layout across all bases and has glass foundations so that it doesn't catch fire because of raids. In a hidden corner room, I placed every stat-boosting item here. Since you want to be only running vampiric pals, you won't actually need beds in reach. However, I placed 15 pal pods because not having enough beds influences sanity. And after raids, you always want to ensure a fast recovery. 3 high-quality hot springs, because so far only 2 were needed at max. A medicine rack just in case. As for getting around, there are 2 ways up, an elevator and the staircases. Personally, I like using the staircases for quick single-floor changes, but the elevator is way faster for getting from top to bottom and back up again. Floor 2, the pal work area, has 1 large power generator for the incubators, 2 wheat plantations, and 1 berry plantation. We also got a quartz mine for missile production. Then, we have a food box and a ranch for honey production. For the breeding floor, I placed 4 farms, where the one to the side was a bit tricky to place. You want to make sure to place the farm first, and then the wall. Each of these has 2 large-scale electric incubators, and 2 straw beds hidden under the piles of straw. Since this is our main base, we want to have everything important in reach. We got the guild chest for spheres and ammo and the repair bench. Then, there is the monitoring stand to set your breeding pals directly. A bed is also useful to skip nights if you are farming predator pals. Last but not least come the pal condensator and statue of power. Alright, so for floor 4, we're starting at the Jetragon entrance. First thing you'll see is the Wandering Merchant. Super useful for the late game. You're mostly going to need cake and missiles, and this guy's got you covered. He sells everything for cake except honey, but your bee guard's already handling that. Remember that we already produce berries, so we usually don't need to buy any extra. Plus, he's got paldium fragments, pal fluid, and pal oil, which you'll need for missiles. And since we also produce quartz in this base, as well as ore in our mining bases, we have everything at hand to work our way up to the end product. Next to him, there's a furnace for making pal metal ingots, a mill for turning wheat into flour, and 2 ovens for baking cake. Then we've got our production assembly lines. One turns pal oil into polymer, and the other turns that polymer into circuit boards. After that, the weapon assembly line takes over and cranks out missile ammo. You'll also need some crude oil, which we could either get from another base or expeditions. Everything else here is optional. If you want, you can throw in some doors and set up a little warehouse for extra storage. Floor 5 has just 1 expedition station for easy access with Jetragon. I want to take a moment to go over the best expeditions, since choosing the right ones can make a huge difference in efficiency. Personally, I focus on the PAL Genetic Research Laboratory to farm PAL souls, which are essential for maxing out my PALs. If you need other resources, though, there are some great alternatives. If you're looking to stock up on potions, the Rain Syndicate Smuggling Warehouse is great since it drops cavern mushrooms. And if you want an all-around expedition for crude oil or ancient civilization cores, the Dark Cave of Feybreak is a great choice. It provides a mix of useful resources, including extra food, which you can turn into attack boost food for even more combat power. Going into the layout of Base 2, Floor 1 is pretty much the same as in Base 1. For Floor 2, we're focusing on producing the food for Minestrone, which boosts work speed. I found that having 1 tomato, 1 potato, 2 onion, and 2 carrot farms works best. There's also an oven placed on top of a glass ceiling, right above the food box, so that Phalaris Aqua can easily transfer the food from A to B. Floor 3 is the same as in Base 1, but with fewer structures in the middle since this isn't the main base. For Floor 4, we're filling almost every free tile with skill fruit orchards. I left a gap in the middle to make it easier to dismount from Jetragon, and also to place chests in the center, which makes setting up the skill fruits a lot faster. And finally, I placed another expedition station on Floor 5. Make sure that it is aligned so you can reach it from both Jetragon entrances. Next is Base 3, and as usual, Floor 1 is the spa area. On Floor 2, we have 2 large ore mining sites dedicated to ore production. This setup ensures a steady supply of ore for later use. The main difference on Floor 3 is that we've added an item retrieval machine right next to the PAL box. This allows us to quickly collect ore and fast travel to Base 4, where we can store the ore in a chest next to the PAL box. Now, Floor 4 was empty, so I decided to add 1 chest for each PAL. The idea is to get 20 eggs of each, so that breeding is easier and leveling is faster when the number of captured PALs for which you get bonus XP is increased again. Finally, we close off Base 3 with the expedition station. Last but not least is Base 4. As usual, we start off with the spa area and head right to Floor 2. This floor can be mirrored with the same setup as in Base 3. On Floor 3, we've placed a chest to store ore from other bases, making it easier to manage and use resources from different locations. Floor 4 will be reached from the staircases when we go through the standard route. That's why we start with the gigantic furnaces to melt ore into ingots. Right next to the furnaces, we've set up our gold coin assembly lines to produce as much gold as possible. I'd recommend placing a medicine rack on this floor, since gold production heavily depends on sanity. Anubis in particular tends to get weakened more often than any other PAL, so it's important to keep that in mind. Lastly, we wrap things up with another expedition station on Floor 5. Now that we have the structures covered, let's talk about the PALs I use, and how you can adjust your setup depending on what you need most. Since you can run up to 8 breeding PALs in these bases, that only leaves 7 spots for base PALs. That's why you'll need to find the right balance. For Base 1, I have Orcirc for hatching, Lylene for wheat and berry production, and 2 Phalaris Aqua, one focused on flour, the other on food. Frostallion keeps food frozen. Blazimet Ryu produces cake and food, but also mines quartz in his free time. 1 Bee Guard takes care of honey production, and Anubis takes care of the crafting. If you want a more relaxed setup, you can also add Dr. Braun and a green wandering merchant to generate high-quality oil for missiles, produce eggs and milk, and even bring in some extra wheat when needed. Assigning them to primitive workbenches makes them easier to manage. Keep in mind that if you go for 8 breeding PALs instead, you'll need to swap them out accordingly. Here are my monitoring stand settings. For Orcirc, deactivating everything except electricity helps optimize its role. Anubis should only focus on ammo production, so we turn off mining and transporting. Base 2 uses 1 Orcirc, along with 1 Lylene for food production. Since this base provides food for the others as well, 3 Phalaris Aqua help with both food and skill fruits, while Frostallion and Blasmate Ryu play the same roles as before. And here you see my monitoring stand settings. I turned off transport for 1 Phalaris Aqua, since sometimes they tend to only focus on transporting the food. We always want one to be ready for the skill fruits, though. When it comes to mining, things are pretty straightforward. Base 3 runs with Orsurk, Frostallion, and Blasmate Ryu as the core workers. The rest are Noclums, making sure mining and transporting stay efficient. Now let's go over the monitoring stand settings for Base 3. This is the assignment board. And for the work preferences, I deactivated gathering for Noclum, so that they don't go all the way down to gather berries if a bush grows randomly. Lastly, Base 4 is set up similarly, but has one key difference. Anubis is added to focus on gold production, while the remaining slots are filled with Noclums. To cover my whole setup, here are my monitoring stand settings. Anubis has mining deactivated so it focuses only on gold, and gathering is turned off for Noclum, just like in Base 3. Now that we've got the setup covered, let's dive into a sample run to see how it all comes together. To keep things quick, I've sped up the video so you can see the process. We'll kick things off with the expedition in the main base. Without further ado, let's jump into the run. To finish things off, let's go over some optional improvements you can make. This will also involve tweaking world settings. These changes aren't required but can make things more efficient and easier to manage. If you ever feel like you need more space, you could simply remove the walls on the sides to open things up even more. You could replace one base with a raid-only base if you are playing on a 4-base cap and want to farm IV fruits. For better control over resource gathering, turning off raids and closing off the first floor can stop pals from gathering unnecessary materials outside. If you're not a fan of item weight, you can set it to 0. This is super useful if you're running multiple mining bases with just one gold production. It helps you avoid the hassle of constantly shifting ore from one base to another. Another helpful tweak is setting the deterioration rate to 0. This allows you to build permanent connections between bases, making travel much easier without always relying on flying. However, keep in mind that this will make your route more static and less flexible. In order to make breeding more efficient, you could increase the daytime. If you are leveling and farming alpha pals, on the other hand, you would want to shorten it. If you want to push automation even further, you can increase the pal worker limit. 30 is usually more than enough to handle everything efficiently. Expanding the base count is another great option, letting you boost expeditions and even set up specialized bases, like a raid base or a crude oil base, for additional resource management. All right, that wraps up everything. I hope my Beehive 4-in-1 base helps you out, and if you've got any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I'll do my best to help. Thanks for watching.